Susan here. I want to talk about haute couture, what it means, what is haute couture, what is not, and how is it relevant today. I'm going to talk about some of the history, but I'm going to hopefully not make it too boring for you. So the definition of haute couture: haute means high, couture means dressmaking, sewing, or fashion. So haute couture means high fashion. And couture is the highest level of workmanship on a dress, on a garment, mostly done by hand. It's executed mostly by hand, and it's usually for a private customer, made to order with fittings. So that's the basic definition of it. And it started in France, in Paris, and there's a whole chamber with rules and regulations whether you are considered a couturier or not. And those rules are that the first thing that you have to have is that the garment is made by order for specific measurements, mostly by hand with at least one fitting. You also have to have 15 or more employees working in full time at the atelier, which is the house of the couture house that you have, and 20 full-time employees working on a technical aspect like the beading and the pleating and all of the intricate work. You also have to have a show twice a year with 50 or more pieces shown to the public. So that is the basic parts of what couture is. Or it has started in France, where it still is mostly recognized in France, although Europe has their share of couturiers. America is not recognized as having any couturiers, although I do believe there are some, and I'll mention that later. So that was started by Charles Frederick Worth in 1840, where he started his couturier business. He also developed a school to continue and educate and make sure that the couture houses continue over the years. There were some other designers that went into some of these houses as they developed, and also branched out and had their own couture houses as well. In the beginning, there was Charles Frederick Worth, and then you had Chanel and Schiaparelli, and you had Valentino and Armani, and those were the Italian ones. And I believe that Alexander McQueen is known in England. Okay, now fast forward. I went to school at the Fashion Institute of Technology in Manhattan, and I specialized in couture. I was actually to be in the program to take the couture program. I was selected to do that. And so I studied what is called Couture Techniques that were told to us at the time. And Couture Techniques are things like, we called it casual and formal fluting. To give you an example of that, here's one of my pieces where it shows casual fluting is usually a biased piece of fabric that is molded over the body and then ruched and pinned and tucked on the actual dress form. Formal fluting is using bias strips, as you can see right here, and done one by one and sewn in by hand. I did this piece with some tufting in the front. So those are kind of a little of a demonstration of what couture is and the techniques. You also have to learn beading and pleating and all kinds of handwork that is not necessarily in your contemporary garment. Showing you another piece of mine that I did. This is all silk chiffon, and over here is silk illusion. Silk illusion, which by the way was about $100 a yard. And this looks like it's very simple, but it really wasn't. These pieces were done on the flat, on an ironing board, and pinned and gathered by hand, and then hand basted and then sewn onto the garment. So it's intricate workmanship. It's the finest and the highest level of workmanship that makes something couture. So what is it relevant today? Well, we also know that some of these designers that started off in these in couture houses went on their own. And let me give you some of those names that were as well. Vionnet and Fortuny and Lavin and Chanel. And then we had Schiaparelli and Balenciaga and of course Dior. To understand this, you can look at some of the videos with Dior, and if you look at the design rooms, and you can see some of those actually on YouTube, you will see one thing that's not very prevalent. You'll see a lot of people wearing white coats, sewing with tables everywhere, and an occasional mannequin here and there, and very few sewing machines. That's because most of the items are actually sewn by hand. Everything from the very beginning, from designing the fabrics to the beading, to the pleating, to the ruching, to the appliques, to all the handwork, that's all designed from scratch. And it's not only the sewing part of it that makes something a couture garment. It is the masterful draping and pattern and design that would also contribute to them. They also were art forms. You have to understand, like Charles James. Well, Charles James was, I believe, one of the founding American couturiers, even though he wasn't born in the United States. And I was lucky enough to study under Charles James' last student, Richard Fredericks, in Manhattan, shortly after he died at the Chelsea Hotel back in the 80s. So I learned a lot of techniques and a lot of very skillful things when I was starting my company. I also used the word couture in my company, and it's because I took the course and I believed that I had a right to at least use the word. Americans have slaughtered the word, that's for sure. In fact, there's an article that I read that's very interesting, and it says, ignorant Americans mix this up and now use couture as to refer to high-end or luxury things. So the next time you walk down and pass a bakery that says Bagel Couture, feel free to call them idiots unless they actually sew the bagels. So that gives you an idea. It's such a prestigious word that it's used all over the world loosely, and especially in America. So yes, we have used it very loosely and abused the word for sure. But it still is something to aspire to have the finest and the highest level of workmanship done on a garment, fitted to order, for an individual that still exists today. So yes, the couture houses are not as prevalent, but they still do exist. And it's very, very expensive to do what they're doing. So a lot of these couture houses have done ready-to-wear lines or lower lines in order to fund and pay for the exorbitant cost of doing and having an atelier with a couture atelier. So I hope that makes sense. I hope you can understand it a little bit further. I hope my demonstration is helpful. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, share this video, subscribe, and ask me a question because you know I'm going to answer it. Thank you. Bye-bye.